I'm currently based in Hyderabad, and coming to Hyderabad itself was a very long journey. I've spent a large part of my childhood years, all my primary years of school, in a city called Nsukka, which is based in Nigeria. My father was a mathematics professor there, and the formative years of my childhood was spent in Nsukka at the university. And of course, it was a very, like all campuses, it was a very protected environment. You only got to interact with a few kids from the campus. And but because it was my formative years, and the culture, see, the Nigerian culture is pretty similar to the Indian culture in some aspects, the family bit and things like that. But in a lot of aspects, they are very different. Women have a voice, women do speak up. At least where I grew up, women speak up. And of course, I didn't know it then. If you've heard of the author Chimamanda, she lived on our street right across our house, So, I mean, there's a lot of boasting rights we have, but I don't know her personally. She was younger than me in school. So we didn't go to the same class, but I'm very good friends with her brother. So this is one of the products of our campus who I can say I'm hugely proud of. And so I just wanted to set the context there by saying, that's the kind of environment that I was raised in. It was very feminist, strong, and not in your face kind of a way. It was very subtle. So you grew up without even knowing that you're imbibing these qualities. And then this was like a very open environment. We would run around the whole day. There was no distinction, you're playing with a boy or you're playing with a girl. I remember actually getting into a physical fight with a boy in my class, of course, who I'm very good friends with now. It was never I was never restricted to wear certain types of clothes and go out. Very, very unfortunately, we moved to India. And I mean, India is a great place, but the part of India that we moved to, I come from a community which is a business community, and we are extremely conservative. I have, so for me, it was jumping from an environment of being extremely liberal and being out there to just suddenly moving to a place. I was about 12, and of course there was a whole new school to adjust to. But the place where we lived, we had no parks. I was never allowed to go out and play, and there was a huge, huge, huge distinction, because of the fact that I'm a girl, right? And so when you go out to play, you can't play with boys, you have to make your own band of girls. And so this move for me showed me two sides of an extreme world. One side where I was just footloose and fancy free, so to say, and the other side which was so conservative that of course it took me many years, and I never really fitted into that culture or that environment. It also taught me a lot of things of how women, and because I'd seen the other side, I think from a very early age, I sort of figured out how women are oppressed. I was 13 when somebody sent my mother a rishta. So my mother said, she's 13, chill, abhi to usko bahut saal padhai karni hai. And thankfully I had very, very broad-minded parents. It's just that the place we lived in, there were times where you had to come in. I had to ditch all my shorts and my skirts and things like that, and I had to move on to shalwar kameezes. I could wear jeans. My parents never told me ye mat pehno ya wo mat pehno. It's just that the whole environment of the place was such that I couldn't see any of my cousins doing the things that I was doing. And so it just made me sort of step back and say, oh, is this really necessary? I think that's pretty much the change. So this was like one drastic change that I saw in my childhood, and one of the influences also for everything that I do today, because I knew in my hearts of hearts, growing up in that conservative culture, that domestic abuse, domestic violence come as gifts to you, you know. It is आपने शादी कर ली है तो आपको वो gift मिलेगा. You may want to have it. Women are, there's so many set of rules that women have to live by, and that is something that got entrenched in my mind, I think, when I was so young. Of course, I moved on and I did my education, but all the while when I was studying, I think marriage was the ultimate aim. It was just understood. It was not something that I had to do on purpose, or you know, it was just understood ki the minute she finishes her graduation, तो शादी तो करनी ही है, because that's how business families operate. And करियर भी बनाना है तो शादी करनी है. Whatever your objective in life is, the ultimate goal for any girl from my community at the time I was growing up used to be marriage, and probably 90% of it is still the same way. You know, it's marriage. Marriage is the ultimate, the most prized goal. Children are such trophies. कि शादी नहीं हुई, बच्चे नहीं हुए तो pretty much it doesn't matter how much you educate yourself, you're a failure anyway. So that's the kind of community I grew up in. Although my parents were very liberal and they always allowed me, you know, a whole lot of things which the other girls from the community were never allowed. I think I wore jeans all my life. I studied in a university where we were not allowed to wear jeans. I wore jeans all my life. I pretty much did everything. I mean, I think it's not a good comparison, but sort of to say that everything that boys did, you know, I did that. And so it was, I was always that square peg in the round hole when I was growing up in my formative years in Lucknow. Um, uh, this is, I think, I was around 21. So I got married when I was 21, and this was my first marriage. I had no experience. Nobody ever tells you what to expect, you know, what are the rules you should follow. But it's that, you know, ye ladka acha hai, he's from a good family. They don't even look at the boy himself. The family is looked at, and perfect age in my community to get married. 21, I was married off. This relationship didn't work very well. The family was okay, but the person I got married to, he was an alcoholic. um, and we sort of have this whole thing where whatever men do, it is normalized. And though he was not violent, the behavior was always कि वो जो कर रहा है वो ठीक कर रहा है, and your work is to just get up, cook, mind your business. And so I was never, because my father had never raised me that way, so I was sort of never, I never understood that mindset. I said, why should I keep quiet? If he's doing something I don't like, I have my rights to express whatever he's doing. And so that relationship, of course, didn't last. I think I lived in that house for 7 months, and then 7 months, a violent episode happened where he chased me with a knife, and I had to save myself. I had to run, jump to the other home, and sort of run away from there. But what happened is my father never asked me to go back. He said, "Nahi, bus, this is it." You know, it just takes one episode to go through this, and if he's chased you today with a knife, tomorrow he will slap you. And my father put his foot down. I was very young, I was very naive, I thought I was in love. I had wanted to go back, but my father said, no, you are not going back. Nobody in my house is getting beaten by anybody else. Nobody in my house is getting violated by anyone else. And my father, my brother, my mother, they stood by me like rocks. In fact, in most homes, you know, girls want to go back. In my home, it was also the same. I wanted to go back. I thought कि नहीं यार, होता है, छोटा मोटा झगड़ा होता है. And see, all of the liberalism and everything went for a toss when all of this came into the picture. Because at the end of the day, I thought to myself ki, you know, let's make it work. Let's make it work. And you know, my success lies in making this relationship successful. If this relationship is not successful, people are going to call me out, you know, they'll say things about me. This is something my parents never bothered about. um, I remember, post divorce, of course. And so 97, I got my divorce, which was a very, very rare thing those days. But my family stood by me. I have never, ever, ever felt isolated. And probably that is the reason I've always felt strong, because I've always had these people stand by me, tell me this is right, this is wrong, ye kar sakte ho, ye nahi kar sakte ho, so that sort of always stayed with me. And even though I had this whole life, 6 7 months of my life where I experienced patriarchy and misogyny, nothing, my dad was so solid as a rock. He bought me a moped when I was younger. And we had people in our community who told him, अरे आप लड़की को moped लेके दे रहे हो, लड़की आपकी हाथ से निकल जाएगी. So my father very clearly told them, he said, वो मेरी लड़की है, वो मेरे हाथ से निकलेगी. I will figure out what to do. I don't need ज्ञान for you, from you. Don't tell me कि मुझे मेरी लड़की को कैसे बड़ा करना है. And growing up in the heart of UP, this kind of an attitude is never acceptable. And so my father also saw, I mean, faced a lot of shit because of me, because people would always say कि ये देखो डॉक्टर रस्तोगी has let his daughter out, हाथ से छोड़ दिया है, ये तो कुछ भी करती है, तो जब देखो लड़कों के साथ घूमती रहती है. अच्छा, incidentally I just had a lot of male friends because the career I decided to choose for myself, of course I had to become financially independent. I decided to set up a business. And so my dad helped me set up a business because we didn't have too many jobs in Lucknow at that time. You probably could just become a teacher if you were a girl. There were barely any corporate jobs, a handful of, I think, 2 or 3 banks. So all the MBAs got recruited in the banks. And so I was at that point of time where we had no corp. And I pretty much think it's the same. Even today, we might have few more jobs, a few hundred or few thousand may have increased, but when I was working, we absolutely had no jobs. And so my father said कि नहीं, business ठीक रहेगा, you'll be your own boss, you can do your own thing. And I don't know if that was a good decision or a bad decision, but for 10 years that's what I did. I ran a wholesale and a retail business of opticals. And I was in the heart of the city. I had an office in the heart of the city. I worked alongside men all day. And so 10 years were, I don't even know whether those things are necessary for girls to learn, but I picked up lessons of my life, which uh, all of which went on to shape the way that I think today. I'll give you an example. So when I was there, of course, it was a male-driven business. The business that I chose was a male-driven business, and so the competition was intense. And to see a girl step into their arena and sort of do it in the same way that they are doing it, of course, this was never acceptable to any of the men. And 10 years of my life, I had to struggle for little things like just having a bathroom. So where I started my office, that was a commercial complex, and at that point of time, we had no bathrooms in the complex because it was never designed for girls or women to use at all. And I remember having to walk a kilometer. We had a railway office, opposite where my office was, and I remember having to walk a kilometer to use the loo. And then it was, of course, the railway officials always had the key, so it was very humiliating. आप वहां जाओ, आपको चाबी मांगनी पड़ती है, you have to ask for the key, and then they ask you what do you have to do, आपको क्या करना है, where have you come from. And so as basic a need as to use the bathroom, I had to suffer, I think, almost a year and a half of extreme humiliation. There were no places. We didn't have these cafe coffee days, and there was a public bathroom which was, I think, a kilometer and a half away. And just for a facility as basic as a bathroom, and these are factors that I had never thought of. When I started my business, it was about, अच्छा profit कैसे बनाएंगे, माल कहाँ से लाएंगे, how will we do this, how will we. I never factored in that a bathroom could be such a huge thing. Now this complex did have a set of bathrooms, and the keys were with the landlord of that particular complex. And so when I struggled for a year and a half, somebody came and told me, he said, yeah, why don't you ask Javed for the keys? And so I went to Javed. Javed said, nahi, nahi, I can't open up those loos to you. I said, hey, Javed, there are 8 or 10 of them. Just give me the key for one of them. I promise I'll maintain it properly. I'll keep it clean, and but I will be the only one using it. I understand there's a property issue here. And of course, that guy flat out refused to give me the keys. He said, no, you find another place to use the loo. And I think that was pretty much a very huge turning point for me, because I told Javed, I think at that point of time, I said, Javed, either you are giving me a key or I'm going to beat you up to a pulp, because I will not beg for my right to use a bathroom. If I am in a complex, in a commercial complex that has a set of bathrooms, I am entitled to the key for one of them. And if you require a rent or if you require something, I will be happy to pay. And so I think that was the first threat per se as a woman that I ever gave out to anyone. And I told Javed, I will beat you to a pulp. Of course, it was not in English, इतना sophisticated नहीं था. तो मैंने उसको बोला था कि जावेद, मैं इतना मारूंगी बेटा कि तुम्हारी टांगे टूट जाएंगी, तुम चलने लायक नहीं बचोगे. That was, sort of the lingo I used for them. And beneath all of what I'm doing today, there's a very hardcore UPite, someone who suffered the patriarchy for and misogyny for many, many years. And बाथरूम की चाबी मुझे बहुत लड़ झगड़ के एक मिल गई. एंड आई कीप स्विचिंग फ्रॉम हिंदी टू इंग्लिश, इज दैट ओके? तो मुझे बाथरूम की चाबी मिल गई. When I walked to the place where the bathrooms were, so there was a bit of a space, and there was a U-shaped thing, and there were some bathrooms on this side and some on this side. And so that space in the middle, it was so dirty. People had used it for all their businesses. So I got the key of a bathroom, but I had no way to even reach that. And this, we are talking about basic dignity of a girl who's educated, comes from a good family, has all the family support in the world, and does not even have a bathroom to use. This is such a basic dignity. And I was shocked. I had never seen that part of the building before. It was full of shit, I think almost 6 to 8 inches full of shit, and you just couldn't even walk to the bathroom. मुझे चाबी मिल गई, मैं जा नहीं सकती हूँ. I'm still back to square one, right? And every day using the bathroom, at least twice a day you go, right? When you're on an 8-hour job, you use at least twice a day. And I had reduced drinking water. I was not drinking chai with other people. I wasn't socializing much because this had become a huge issue, right? Finally, I decided कि अब ऐसा तो नहीं चलेगा. And so I used my money and I got that whole, so that was a common space for everybody, and I got the whole thing cleaned up so that I could use my one bathroom. And so there were 8 of them, 4 on this side and 4 on this side. And it took about, I think, a week for it to get cleaned, because we couldn't find someone to clean it. It was all shit that was there lying there. And so we had to find someone from a particular community who would do that work, and all of that happened. That's a whole different story about community and caste. That's a whole different story. But we finally found someone who would clean it up and cleaned it up. And finally, I think after a week, I could finally reach the bathroom that was mine. And it was not even a bathroom, it was just like an Indian toilet, locked behind a door. And when I open it, I realized there's no water. There's no water supply. That particular area of the building does not have water supply. There are no pipes, there are no taps, there is no tank, there is nothing. So I'm still back to square one in the same situation where I have to walk for a kilometer and a half every day, and I'm still struggling with this aspect. So anyway, I think this was a huge turning point for me in many, many ways, because I realized how much women have to struggle for their dignity. Of course, I managed to get someone to fill me water, and I did all of those things. And I think 2 years was what I spent struggling to get the most basic dignity that I deserved. And the rest of the 8 years, of course, I became extremely aggressive. I hate calling myself a tomboy, because that sort of means that, I'm a woman and I was a very aggressive woman. So if men would come and speak to me or even look at me in the weirdest of ways, mera marpit ho jata tha. I was physically very, very aggressive, because I realized at that point of time, nobody is going to stand up for you. You have to get up and count for yourself. And when you're doing business in a state like UP, it is fraught with danger. It doesn't matter whether you're selling clothes or you're selling baby stuff. It doesn't matter the kind of business you're doing. But when you are growing up in a UP, in a city like Lucknow, this I'm talking about the mid 90s, sort of, that's the point of maybe mid to late 90s. That's the time when you're a girl, and so there is a lot of catcalling is it's just so basic. I mean, catcalling is like, अच्छा कुछ हुआ ही नहीं, अरे क्या हुआ, सीटी मार दी ना उसको, देखे क्या हुआ, कुछ भी नहीं हुआ. So every year in Lucknow, we have New Year and Christmas celebrations. So what the police does is, this particular marketplace, it's like an MG road kind of a thing, and they block it from both the sides, and they allow people to walk on the road. So there's no traffic, there's no cars and things like that. And so a select group of men would go out at night, because of course this was all midnight, क्योंकि क्रिसमस की वजह से तो midnight mass का सारा crowd है, and New Year's is, so everyone wants to be out on the road celebrating at midnight. And this particular group of men, they would get together, all men that I worked with, every single person that I worked with, and they would form these small gangs of 4 or 5 people, and they would say, "Ah, chalo, let us go. We'll elbow people, we'll pinch people, we'll slap them on their butt," you know. And these were all planned activities, and they were done. I was part of this group of men that was doing this, right? So I decided, how do I save myself from this, right? At that point of time, it was never कि आपको ये नहीं करना चाहिए, आपको ऐसा नहीं करना चाहिए. This is very degrading, humiliating. And I was the only woman in the midst of, I think 50 men at that point of time. 50, 55 men would have been there at that point of time. I had a very good friend, who was always there for me, and he would save me from the conversations that these other men had. But he wasn't there all the time. I mean, you have friends, they come in and they go. So I never told these boys कि आपको ये नहीं करना चाहिए. What I did is, I thought कि बेटा, you protect yourself first. अपनी प्रोटेक्शन सबसे जरूरी है. As long as you don't get elbowed, you don't get pinched, you don't get harassed and hassled, you just stay out of it. And because I was a business person, I myself had the reputation of being extremely aggressive and angry when it came to men misbehaving. So I was never misbehaved with, but because of all of these experiences, I think these are what led me to become so angry and so defensive all the time. I was always on very high alert, always. I think 10 years of my adult life, I've been hyper vigilant, if that's the right word to use. Hyper vigilant. um and somehow I don't even remember how I went through those 10 years of my life. I protected myself. I became strong for myself. I picked up fights for myself. Whatever I did was with the sole purpose of protecting myself. क्योंकि मैं औरत हूँ, मेरे साथ अगर कुछ हो जाएगा, then I have nowhere to turn to. That's when people are going to turn around and shame my family. कि देखिए आपने बेटी को इतनी छूट दी, देखिए इसके साथ ये हो गया. So even if someone violated me, right, my father would have been blamed for giving me too much freedom to me. I landed myself in that situation. I think you sort of understand kaisa hai ye, it's like you getting blamed for every single thing that happens. So किसी तरह से मैंने 10 साल निकाले. 10 years down the line, I realized I'm not growing as a human being, right? ठीक है पैसे हैं बिजनेस में, आई एम सेटल्ड, इवेंचुअली मुझे कोई लड़का भी मिल जाएगा, बिकॉज द ऑल द टाइम द प्रेशर वाज कि शादी करो शादी करो शादी करो शादी करो, यू नो। आई थॉट मिल ही जाएगा कोई ना कोई, बट at this point of time वो कोई ना कोई चला नहीं मुझे, you know, the minute a man would see someone like me, and मैंने क्या किया था, I sort of changed my appearance. So मैं jeans पहनने लग गई, I used to wear a khadi kurta, I used to wear boots at that time, you know, sort of trying to create that whole tough girl image कि मेरे पास आओगे बेटा तो मैं मार दूंगी, type of image. And एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम आई थॉट कि यार ग्रोथ तो कुछ हो नहीं रही है, 10 साल हो गया वही सिचुएशन, वही लोग, ना ये ग्रो कर रहे हैं ना मैं ग्रो कर रही हूँ. And I think overnight, it just sort of happened overnight, I lost interest in what I was doing. I just lost interest. I don't know how it happened, what happened. And I, of course, ran into huge debts, huge debts. And at that point, I took a judgment call. I think my mother was very instrumental in this. She said, Beta, this business in a city like Lucknow is not good. You're so scared, and I was scared to move out, you know. I was in my comfort zone, so I was very scared to move out. I thought दुनिया में तो सब ऐसे ही होते हैं, so wherever you go this is how you have to fight and defend yourself. I was hyper vigilant at that point of time, but my mother said कि नहीं, step out and see how life is. आप लखनऊ से बाहर निकले ही नहीं हो कभी, and we have never stopped you, right? So you are limiting your own self, you step out and see. And so at 32 I decided I'm going to change my career. I'm going to get a job because I have these huge loans to pay off. If I don't get a job, I won't be able to pay off my loans. मेरा business ठप हो गया है, मैंने सब कुछ, I just shut it down. I think 3-4 महीने के अंदर I just shut down the whole thing. And of course I had huge loans to pay off, so I had to pick a job. There was no other option. And my first move was to Delhi. And when you move from Lucknow to Delhi, pretty much everything's the same. कुछ difference नहीं आया. I stayed in a women's hostel. उस women's hostel में the hostel owner's son and his friends used to come at night. You know, and they used to sit there and they would sit around and they would laugh and joke, and the girls in the hostel would participate. And I was like, यार ये औरतों का hostel है, लड़कियों का hostel है, why the hell are these men coming in? And I raised this point. It was a very general point, but overnight I was asked to vacate that hostel. At 10 o'clock in the night, they just told me, pack all your things and get out of the hostel. I'm in Lakshmi Nagar. It's 10 o'clock in the night. I've been asked to pack up all my things. My instinct kicked in. I said, no, I'm not packing anything and going anywhere. मैं अभी पुलिस को बुला लूंगी, तुम लोग ये सब nonsense कर रहे हो. But give me a day, I will pack up everything and leave. And so I fought back. But those 2 entire nights that I stayed back in that hostel, I was very scared. I was like, ये लोग क्या करेंगे मेरे साथ, you know? And all I did was objected to the fact कि यहाँ लड़के क्या करने आ रहे हैं? This is a women's premise. The whole place is supposed to be safe. And anyway, a couple of days later, I found another place and I moved there. Delhi, pretty much the same. You should come back home at a particular time. You should leave at a particular time. I don't remember being out of the house ever after 7. You know, it was always 7 baje, so everyone starts panicking. Ghar pahunche ki nahi. And we didn't have this whole mobile phone system was not so active at that point of time. It was very in its nascent stages. And people would call up and check, but second to second reporting was never possible at that point of time. I don't ever remember being out of the house in Delhi at 7, because I always thought ki if I'm out of the house in Delhi at 7, I'm surely going to get killed. And so I joined this group that transferred me to Bangalore. And that was my first ever exposure to an environment which was, I will not say liberal, but conducive to women. So I moved to Bangalore, and that's where I actually start. So this stage of life that I am at, this is where it started. It started in Bangalore. I was around 33 years old. I realized, oh, there's a whole new world. यहाँ पर तो लोग किसी को कुछ कहता ही नहीं है. You know, for someone coming from such an environment, Bangalore is like an eye opener for you. Nobody cares about what you're wearing, nobody's bothered about where you're going, your timings don't matter. But I was so hyper vigilant. Bangalore, maybe I lived there for 6 years almost, and I never stepped out of the house beyond 8 o'clock. If I was out of the house beyond 8 o'clock, I always I had an escort. It would have been a friend, it would have been someone, but there was always someone to escort me. I never really got out of that phase where I could get myself to be out of the house, after a particular time. Um, that's when I met Vivek when I was in Bangalore. We met on shadi.com. Our story is out there actually for everyone to see. We have a video that shadi.com did on us. He had lost his wife to cancer, his first wife to cancer. He had adopted two girls. And of course, everybody asked me, do you want to get married to this guy? इसके तो दो बच्चे हैं. How will you manage? And you have no experience with kids, you're such a tomboy. I was always known as a tomboy. Whatever that tomboy means, I just hate that word. But that's what everyone kept telling me. तुम इसके साथ कैसे adjust करोगी? How will you become a housewife? You've not done it. Are you even fit to do it? And anyway, I think I've proven everyone wrong. And today we are, 10 years of our marriage this year, and we are cohabitating very peacefully. All four of us come from different places. Both my kids don't have the same biological mother. They've come from the same hospital. They've been adopted from the same hospital. And him and his first wife, they were raising them. When I got them, I started raising them. My girls are doing beautifully today. I sort of think it's a feather in my cap because, going through whatever bitterness or things that I went through, for me to get out and learn. But this whole Bangalore experience was very necessary for me because I was living in sort of a कुएं का मेंढक जिसे बोलते हैं. I was sort of living there, and I always kept thinking this is how the world is like this. I did not know anything about women having choices, women having a voice to speak out. I didn't know anything about all of these things. So who I am, where I am today pretty much is very, very a lot of credit goes to my husband, Vivek, because he told me, no, you can have a voice. I think one of the things that happened is I went for an interview to a Bangalore-based company, and I had these 10 years of being an entrepreneur and one year of working. So I thought कि मैं इनको क्या बोलूँ, and this was like a pure play corporate job at a small company. मैं इनको क्या बोलूँगी? What will I tell them? Should I tell them about the kind of business I had? Initially, I thought I'll lie on my certificates, but then I couldn't get myself to do it. And I told them, I said, देखो 10 साल यार मैंने business चलाया, and till then everyone had told me, अरे तुम तो failure हो, you couldn't even run your own business, इतना अच्छा खासा business तुमने डुबा दिया, तुमने ये किया, तुमने वो किया. So I'd heard a lot of that. And so when I went for the interview to this particular company and I told them, I thought I wouldn't get selected. But they selected me for a business development role because that's pretty much what I'd been doing all my life. And so I asked the HR one day in a conversation, okay, why did you select me? I had no profile which was even close to what you people were looking for, yet you selected me. So she said, we selected you because we thought that, someone who's run an entrepreneurship for 10 years, you have the ability to take risks. And so we hired you. And so this showed me a completely different life. I had no idea that failures could be celebrated, that you could be your own person. Okay, so I think I'll leave Bangalore behind and sort of jump to Hyderabad again. I came here and 2011 was when I lost my mother. And my mother had always, this is what we use the word mistreatment. So my mother had always been mistreated by my grandmother. And our move from Nigeria to India for her was never a good one. All sorts of pressures, our relatives would come and tell my grandmother, ab to tumhari bahu aa gayi hai, ab you should enjoy your old age. And then they would go and tell my mother कि अब तो तुम आ गई हो, क्या कहते हैं इंडिया से, एंड अब तो तुम इंडिया आ गई हो, and now you have your mother-in-law to take care of the kids, so you can afford to relax a little bit. And so they would pit them together, and my grandmother, who was also a fantastic person, would mistreat my mother a lot. And one of the incidences that happened was, she actually, people had put, of course, you can't poison anyone to this extent, but one of the incidences that happened was that people told my grandmother कि इसको घर से निकालो, इसको घर से निकालो, ये देखो तुम्हारे पूरे घर पे कब्जा कर रही है. Of course there was a lot of, because business families में politics बहुत होती है. But one of the incidences that stayed with me was, my grandmother actually switched on our gas gas stove, and she left it on, and she sort of went to the temple, and my mother had gone out somewhere, and when my mother came back, she was very very lucky. She had fortunately sniffed, and she could smell the gas, and so she didn't light it on, but the idea was that if she lights this on, this is going to blast, and this is going to harm her. And of course we could never ever prove that this is what happened. I was very young at that point of time. My mother was extremely traumatized by this particular, and it is a very traumatizing thing to happen to someone when you realize that someone that you're living with is actually trying to kill you. So it is very very traumatizing. And though we couldn't prove it, and though my father stood up to my grandmother, and he said this is not acceptable, if this ever happens again, because she of course came back and said nahi nahi galti se reh gaya, I forgot about it, aisa nahi hua, I didn't do it on purpose, and all of that. But in my mother's mind it sort of stayed uh, till the time she was alive. And she got detected with diabetes very early. I don't know if she was depressed or not, but in retrospect, when we think, we feel that she might have been depressed. But as a family, we had no idea of what mental health was. But what I realized in this whole in this whole period where I was looking at my journey and I kept struggling for my life, my mother had a very, very lonely life, very lonely journey. So this, when I lost her in 2011, I think at that point of time it sort of stuck with me ki, at some point of time I will help women who are going through um, this kind of loneliness. So when I got married to Vivek, I thought, I was supposed to shift cities, and hence shifting of the career. So I told Vivek, I said, Vivek, you're so well settled. Do you really need me to, get a job and sort of start working? So he said, see, you do whatever you want to do as long as you're comfortable doing it. So it was never intended to be a career. I said, look, I want to start this group where people have a safe space. So जिसको जिसको भी ये domestic abuse का problem है, emotional abuse का problem है, they can come and just vent out on the safe space. Sometimes all you need is a space for someone to talk to. So when I started Invisible Scars in 2016, it was never started with the intent of becoming an enterprise or a social initiative. It was just started as a safe space where women could come speak, because the journey of an abuse survivor is so lonely. We ask abuse survivors all the time, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you say something? But it's so lonely. You can only understand it. And because I had this whole experience with my mother, and I knew what my mother went through, and she passed away just a year before I got married. So she missed out seeing me with a good husband. She missed out seeing me with, and of course, it was always coveted for the family. And she missed out seeing me as a good mother to my own children. So all of those things she missed out. And that was a very, very personal, very this thing. And that is what prompted me to create this space. And of course, I created this space. I had 50 friends who I invited on Facebook. I was told that यार nobody is going to come on your group. तुम्हें क्या लगता है लोग आकर के अपनी पर्सनल बातें तुमसे करेंगे? It's not going to work out. Don't waste your time. And many people told me this. Many people who subscribe to my work today and are still part of my group tell me this, that कुछ नहीं होगा, कोई नहीं आएगा. Nobody is going to tell you what they're going through. And it happened like that for a year. So when I started the group, I started with around 50 people. I then, just kept pestering everyone. So somehow I got 200 people on the group. And for a year, it was just one way. The whole communication on the group was one way. I kept posting stuff about abuse. I started teaching myself about abuse. I started reading more. I reached out to counselors. I would talk to them. I reached out to lawyers. I would talk to them. I would get on calls. I would understand. I thought, agar koi mere paas aata hai, how will I be prepared to help them? Is there something I can do for them? So maybe I need to educate myself. So I don't think there is any online article or literature which I have not studied. I have studied, gone through research. I follow practically every UK based website, Australian website, because these are places that are doing good work. I've collected lots of information over the years, but 2016 to 2017, nothing moved on the group. Nothing. And at I think around 2017, I thought, yeah, maybe this is a futile effort. Maybe people don't actually want to talk about what's going on. Till one of our members posted a problem on the group. I think that day, all shackles of everything that I did just sort of broke on their own. 2017, on our group, we had our first query, our first post. I immediately scrambled, took this person's number. I gave her my number. I said, let's talk. Let's see how I can help you. Right? I don't know about everything. I will have to sort of go and learn about what's happening, but let me see how I can support you. And this was a case, and today her case is in court. She's of course still fighting her case, but she's in court, she's fighting it. She walked out of a bad relationship, and that is when I realized that, oh, I can make a difference. I had never thought that I could make a difference. I was always very underconfident because of these years and years of struggling for very basic respect, dignity, and things like that. I was a bit underconfident. I looked very strong. I looked very aggressive, but internally I was not a very strong person. And this sort of gave me the confidence that I needed. And it was sort of a celebration for me when I helped her. We did research together. We sort of got on how we can do what in the case, how can we reach out to lawyers. So I think I called multiple people, and then I realized, oh, people are willing to help. So I started reaching out to NGOs, I started reaching out to counselors, I started reaching out to lawyers, and that's how Invisible Scars took off. It didn't do anything for an entire year, but after it took off, I don't think there's been any day, even COVID, at the worst of times, I think I get a call every day from somebody or the other. We've now worked in 59 cities, in 11 countries. If you're an Indian in any part of the world, Invisible Scars takes pride in saying that we will help you. No matter what you're going through, we will research. If we don't know a thing about your country, we will research your laws. We will do whatever it takes. We will connect to social organizations there. We will try and get you the help you need. So, Invisible Scars is a support group. It is not a non-profit. We are working under an NGO called Good Universe. Good Universe is the non-profit. Invisible Scars is an initiative under the NGO Good Universe. And that was a structure we decided to create because we started getting donations. And so we needed to sort of come to a place where we could do it in a legal way. And now we are getting money, now we are getting funds to do a lot of things. And so to be able to do it properly, we tied up with this. So I sort of swapped with this NGO called Good Universe. I said, you guys become my team. I will mentor you for free. And Invisible Scars will become part of what we are doing. So currently at Good Universe, we have gender-based violence, sustainable menstruation, and women and climate. All three, and because the founder is someone whose thought process I subscribe to, so I sort of came on board Good Universe. So now I am part of Good Universe, but Invisible Scars is a support group. And we have always positioned ourselves as a support group. We have never created any how do I put it? We've never created any skill sets of ours. We don't believe in reinventing the wheel at all. If something is existing, we like to use those resources to benefit people. So, for example, if somebody came up to me with a legal aid clinic, and I said, listen, if I have to set up a legal aid clinic all over again, it makes no sense because there are hundreds of them existing. We need to bring all legal aid clinics together. And so currently, we are trying to bring people together who are doing legal aid from different cities, because I get survivors from everywhere in the country. And so I want to be prepared to be able to help people with counseling, with everything. And we are still in the process of building it up. It's not the perfect model, but every day I meet new people. There are new tie-ups. There is more enthusiasm for people. They want to come. They want to associate with us, and I think that gives me a lot of strength to just keep going. Right. So any survivor that comes to me, anybody, I never charge them a rupee. I don't want someone coming to me in a state of distress and me saying, "Lao paisa nikalo." I never ever want to be in that space. By the grace of God, my family, my husband's doing well, and so money is not an issue, is not the top of my mind priority. However, because I want to make my initiative sustainable, I have started taking up training programs. So I do training programs, I generate funds from there, or we generate funds through donations. So if we have a survivor who we have to raise money for, last year we did a skilling program for 19 survivors. We skill them in a digital marketing program. So the digital marketing program costed us 10,000 rupees. We tied up with an organization in Chandigarh. We asked our donors for money. We said, "हम ये 19 लोगों को skill करेंगे. You give us the money for it." So we raised money for our survivors. We do everything from reporting to rescue to rehabilitation. You want help with your CV, you want help with your business, whatever it is you want help with, we will find an expert to support you through it. We never charge a survivor for anything at all. Our entire charges are only and only for professionals who come to us. So if a lawyer comes to tie up with us or a counselor comes to tie up with us, we ask them for a referral charge. But the base of all the work and I'm doing right now is that I don't want any survivor to be subject to any economic hardship. So if you are hiring a lawyer, say through us, the lawyers who have tied up with us are very, very, very crystal clear that we will only provide trusted and affordable services. We will not refer anybody to a survivor who is overcharging or who we don't trust. So all our lawyer references come from people who have actually used them. So survivors have used someone, they have come back to me and they've said, "Ekta, we've used this professional, this is good, they don't overcharge." And so all we do is we take a 500 rupee referral fee from whether it is a counselor or whether it is a lawyer. That's a one-time fee simply to make our work sustainable. We raise money through donations and my training program. So whatever I raise personally, I pump it all into this. Thankfully, I keep getting posh training programs, and I do a lot of domestic violence training programs and things like that. So I keep getting them and I keep doing all of them. So that's how we raise money for investments. Very funny. My proudest moment is not someone I helped. My proudest moment is someone I didn't help. And I'll tell you how. So I met this lady at a corporate, I was at a corporate training program, and I met this lady and she asked me for my introduction and I gave her my card, and we have our website printed on the card. And I gave her my introduction for 5 minutes. And then I never ran into her after that. It was just a general conversation. 6 months later, she calls me up and she says, "Hey, how are you doing? Do you remember me?" And I could barely recall who this was. We met at, so and so corporate event. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, 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 yeah." And, I tried to remember who she was. And it turns out that the day she spoke to me, she went and looked up our website. And when she looked up our website, we have an emotional abuse checklist on our website, which has 30 statements that tell you, what are the things that you could be facing if you were abused. And this girl, she looked them up. She realized she's in an emotionally abusive marriage, and she decided to walk out of that marriage. So 6 months down the line, she had shifted to another city. She was, of course, Hyderabad based. She shifted to another city and she was moving homes when her daughter told her, 11-year-old told her that, "Mama, I'm glad you left that guy. I never liked him." This is what the girl said about her father. And that is when this lady called me and she said, "The first person I thought of was you, because if you hadn't introduced yourself to me that day, if I had not gone through your website, my daughter would never have told me how uncomfortable she was living with an abusive father." And so I think that was one of the big things that happened, because it didn't happen with my direct intervention. She did not need me at all. She filed her case on her own. She did everything on her own. She just did not need me. And I realized the power of what you can do, or the power of what you can bring to the table if you're committed to something. And all she did was go through our website. She filed for divorce. She's still fighting her divorce case, and it's almost on closure. But now she lives with her two children. She's a very well established professional, a very senior professional, and her kids are doing much better. And I think that's all I needed. I just needed to be, the someone who sort of because one of the things I realized in my course of work, and I really need help there, is that religion, political ideology, all sort of are superseded by misogyny. I've seen failures all my life. I think uh, failure never really comes in one huge package, is what I understand. It comes in little bits and pieces. I've seen failures, multiple failures throughout my life. I there was a point of time I was thrown out of a job. Probably as a young person, that was my first failure. There are points of times that I've wanted to do something and I've not been able to do it, or I've not had the money to do it, or I've not had the bandwidth to do it, or I've not had the intelligence to understand that this is the right time to do something. I think I've come across multiple failures, but failures to me always mean a stepping stone to something better. Because to me, it's very critical. A failure is a lesson on what you should not do the next time. It's really nothing else. And I think my life is made up of many small failures, if I were to look at it. So failure really to me just means that you have another opportunity. You have to go ahead and just do it differently this time. Be economically empowered. Marriage is not a coveted trophy. Marriage is not a prize. Children are not trophies that you have to win and prove to the world. You don't have to be a good wife. You don't have to be a good mother. You don't have to be a good anything. What you have to be good is to yourself. I think the biggest mistake that women make, and I have also made it, is that we tend to love everybody more than we love ourselves. And I think the crux of everything is that you have to love yourself the most. You have to be your favorite person. I'm not like a huge movie buff or anything, but I still remember Kareena Kapoor's dialogue from a movie ki main meri favorite hu. I think that is what it has to be. You have to be your favorite person. Everything you do should be in line with that. So whether it's a career, whether it's marrying someone, whether it's having children or adopting children, it does not matter. It has to be in line with what you envision for yourself. Otherwise you will end up spending your whole life doing things for other people. They will not be grateful and your life will make up for nothing. So economic empowerment, marriage, children, career, everything should be in line with your love for yourself. Today I'm doing what I'm doing for the simple reason that I love to do it. And initially, of course, I was not making any money. Now I'm getting invited as a trainer to places to work and do more training programs. So now this is my career, but I love doing what I'm doing. I'm empowered to speak my mind. Beyond everything else, I love myself. I say what I want. I get what I want. I demand what I want. And I've seen that all my life, these are things I was scared to do. I was scared to ask for what I thought I deserved. If I thought I deserved something, I would never even go and ask for it. I was so scared. And so it's so important that you should be your top priority. And this is for every single woman in the world. You have to be your top priority, and everything you do for yourself will then fall into line if you are your top priority. So the first most critical thing that we do at home is we recycle at home. Waste segregated at source. I think That's one of the most critical things we are doing. We use as little plastic as we can. When we go out shopping, we carry our own bags. We have cloth bags. And I always remember as a child, my old school tunics, my mother used to stitch them into cloth bags, and my father always took them to shop for his vegetables. Plastic is something which is relatively new. It was introduced when I grew up much more. And so I think one of the most critical things for me is that certain things that were from the past, when you we used, I always remember getting dahi in chai cup in the kulhad. We always used to have curd at a local store. He would set the curd in a steel ka bartan and then give it to us in a mitti ka kulhad. So I remember leading a life like that when I was younger, and my father would go with his kapde ka bag and buy our vegetables and things like that. And so I've sort of reverted to the same things that are there. We try and use as little plastic as possible. We do not waste water. So if I wash vegetables, or if I wash the dals, or I wash this, we try and use all of that water for watering plants at home. We segregate waste at source. We reuse a lot of water. In our community also, we have an STP plant that recycles water for us. We give away. So in our home, if we buy clothes, new clothes, we ensure that the number of clothes being bought, equal number of clothes are given away. So we have tied up with an organization called Gunj, and we send all usable, good material, decent material to Gunj. I try and use a lot of cotton. Personally, I prefer wearing cotton clothes. I try not to buy too many of those chiffons or nylons or things like that. Of course, it's not always possible, but I try my best to have cotton clothes. The reason I buy cotton clothes is also very important. Gunj has a beautiful project called NJPC, not just a piece of cloth. What they do is, whatever clothes I hate using the word donate means that we are better off and those people receiving from us are not so good. So I hate using that word. But the clothes we contribute to Gunj, clothes that are made out of cotton and do not fit anybody, are used to create sanitary napkins. So women in rural areas can use those sanitary napkins. Those are 4 or 5 layers of cotton cloth that is put together for that dignified menstruation, for women who are still using sand, ash, and things like that. And so whatever cotton clothes I have, I sort of give it away to Gunj, hoping that if my shirt cannot be worn by somebody in a rural area, it can at least be converted into a sanitary napkin for someone to use. And so it would last them 2 cycles or 3 cycles, because they can wash and use it. So that clothes we are particular about. I don't encourage my children to overbuy, and I always tell them, once you buy, kisi ko do, give it to someone. All our clothes from our house, everything goes to Gunj. Everything that we can give away that is usable, whether it's shoes, whether it's clothes, we do it. I use a cup and cotton sanitary napkins. I do not use sanitary pads that are non-disposable, because the NGO that I am associated with now, Good Universe, they work for sustainable menstruation. And sanitary pads have become a huge no-no. And I think about 4 years back, when I started using the cup, I switched over to the cup. It was a difficult journey, but now that I'm used to it, I would tend to think that the cup is the most comfortable thing. If you're living in an urban environment and you have clean sanitation facilities, the cup is the most convenient thing you can have. Even if you're not living in an urban environment, if you have a decent bathroom in your home which is clean and you maintain it properly, the cup is one of the most useful things. And I've switched to cotton pads. I prefer cotton clothes. We do a lot of waste segregation. The only thing we are not doing at present is composting. The only thing we are not doing. And that composting is something that we are trying to, a group of us are trying to get together to figure out how to do it within the community instead of going home to do the composting. So composting is the only thing we are not doing. I'm also associated with another NGO called Sahi, and I am helping one of my friends to spread the word about rainwater harvesting. So that's another way that I'm leading a sustainable lifestyle. I'm an active spokesperson for my friend Kalpana, for rainwater harvesting. So if you catch me in a conversation about water, then you're sure to get rainwater harvesting, preach to you for sure, because I believe that when we harvest rainwater, groundwater levels increase, and it means lesser tankers. It also means lesser amount of money. Hyderabad, for example, is on the Deccan Plateau, and to get water to Hyderabad itself is a very expensive affair. So the water, to bring it, to pipe it down to a city like Hyderabad. And so what we need to do is we need to increase groundwater resources. And so I participated in a very beautiful initiative which was called Save 10K Bores. So where we would talk to people about saving the bore wells that they have already dug up, because if you're going to 2200 feet is where you're getting water in Hyderabad now, 2200 feet. And Save 10K Bores was one of the projects that I helped work on very actively. I support an organization called Center for Sustainable Agriculture. So we have worked in raising funds for farmer suicide. So there's a lot of sustainability activities. I actually do a lot of activities throughout the year, some for friends, some myself. At home, this is how I do it, and then outside, sometimes I'm a spokesperson for my friends when they want me to speak up for them, or when they want help with their initiatives. I'm there. So I work on a lot of things simultaneously. The TEDx platform gives me that freedom. You will be very surprised. It's a very ridiculous thing that I've always wanted to do, and I've never really done it. I've always wanted to stop my car in the middle of the road, put on music and dance in the middle of the road, not bothered about what people are going to say. And I really admire the courage of a lot of these Instagrammers and youngsters who are going out there making videos in malls. This is something that I never had. I don't know whether I restricted myself, or I never really had the freedom, or I belong to a different era altogether. But my real dream, and as ridiculous as it sounds, is just to stop my car in the middle of the road and dance and have everyone watch me, just go crazy, and not have to bother about the way I look, or whether someone's going to touch me, or whether someone's going to misbehave with me, or I just want to do it. And a lot of kids these days are very comfortable in their own body, and they do things, and I admire that about them. I just love girls who can go out there and put themselves out there and do whatever it is they want to do and showcase themselves on Instagram and social media. And I probably, as silly as it sounds, at 47, that's one of the things I would have loved to do, but I never got to do it.